Halloween night had fallen upon the quiet town, and a full moon cast an eerie glow over the old cemetery that lay on the outskirts. It was a night when the living and the dead danced on the edge of reality, and an inexplicable urge compelled me to take a walk among the tombstones. I had always been fascinated by the supernatural, and Halloween was the perfect night to explore the mysteries that lurked in the shadows. The cemetery had an unsettling reputation, with whispered tales of restless spirits and unexplained phenomena that had piqued my curiosity. Tonight, I decided to confront my fears and embark on a journey into the unknown. As I entered the graveyard, the moonlight filtered through the gnarled branches of the trees, casting long skeletal shadows that stretched across the uneven ground. The tombstones, worn with time, stood like silent sentinels, their inscriptions faded and weathered. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, and an eerie stillness hung over the graveyard. Each step I took seemed to reverberate through the night, echoing in the silence. The crunch of gravel beneath my feet was the only sound in the hallowed ground, and it sent shivers down my spine. But I pressed on, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As I wandered deeper into the cemetery, my gaze fell upon an ancient mausoleum that loomed in the moonlight. Its stone facade was adorned with elaborate carvings, and a heavy air of history clung to it like a haunting melody. An inexplicable force drew me toward it, and I couldn't resist the urge to explore further. The mausoleum's heavy wooden door creaked open with an eerie groan, revealing a dimly lit chamber filled with crumbling relics and dusty books. The air inside was cool and damp, and I could feel a presence, as if someone, or something, was watching me from the shadows. My flashlight revealed a peculiar book resting on a stone pedestal in the center of the room. Its pages were filled with handwritten entries, each one more chilling than the last. They told stories of lives cut short, of unfulfilled promises, and of love lost to the ravages of time. The words on the pages seemed to come to life, weaving a tapestry of sorrow and despair. As I read the journal, I was unaware of the subtle shift in the air, the barely perceptible whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the mausoleum. The room felt charged with an unseen energy, and a sense of dread washed over me. The whispers grew louder, their voices an eerie chorus that surrounded me. It was as though the spirits of the graveyard had awakened, their presence closing in from all sides. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized I was no longer alone in the mausoleum. The dim light revealed them, a gathering of shadowy figures, their eyes hollow and filled with longing. They beckoned to me with outstretched arms, their voices a mournful lament that seemed to seep into my very soul. I tried to move, to flee, but my body was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. The figures drew nearer, their spectral fingers grazing my skin with a chilling coldness. I could hear their stories, their tales of lives ended prematurely, of love that had been torn asunder, of promises left unfulfilled. They wanted something from me, something I couldn't comprehend. As the figures closed in, I felt a searing pain in my chest, as though 1,000 icy needles were piercing my heart. Desperation coursed through me as I fought to break free, to escape the spectral grasp of the graveyard's restless souls. With a final surge of strength, I tore myself away and stumbled out of the mausoleum. The night air was frigid, and I gasped for breath as I sprinted through the graveyard, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers of the spirits followed me, their mournful cries echoing in the darkness. I reached the wrought iron gates, my hands trembling as I pushed them open and fled into the moonlit night. The cemetery lay behind me, but the haunting memories of that chilling encounter would forever linger in my mind. As I made my way home, I couldn't help but wonder what the spirits had wanted from me. Had I stumbled upon a long-forgotten secret buried within the mausoleum's depths? Or had the graveyard's restless souls simply wanted to share their stories, to remind the living of the fragility of life and the enduring power of the past? One thing was certain. I had taken a walk among the dead on Halloween night, and the chilling encounter had left an indelible mark on my soul. It was a reminder that some mysteries are better left undisturbed, and some places, like the graveyard at midnight, are best explored from a distance. where the living and the dead exist in a delicate balance between this world and the next. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. That is, until that fateful Halloween night when I visited Silverwood Manor. My friends and I were always on the lookout for the most haunted places to explore on Halloween. This year we heard about Silverwood Manor, an old mansion on the outskirts of town. The stories surrounding it were spine-chilling, and we couldn't resist the temptation to investigate. As we approached the imposing wrought iron gates, a shiver ran down my spine. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows on the overgrown path leading to the manor. The wind whispered through the trees like ghostly voices, and the air felt unusually cold. I hesitated for a moment but followed my friends through the rusted gates. The mansion loomed ahead, its grandeur long faded. The windows were shattered, and the ivy-covered walls seemed to ooze with a sinister history. We entered through the gaping front door, which groaned as it swung open. The air inside was heavy with dust and decay. My heart raced as we explored the dark, labyrinthine corridors. Each creak and echo sent shivers down my spine. We found ourselves in the abandoned ballroom, its once opulent chandeliers now reduced to a few shattered crystals. As we joked and laughed, the room grew unnaturally silent. I noticed a dusty, antique mirror at the far end. Its glass was cloudy, and my reflection seemed distorted. I approached the mirror, feeling a strange compulsion to touch it. As my hand made contact, the room spun, and I found myself in a different place. The mirror had transported me to another era, and the ballroom was alive with the sounds of a lavish party. Dressed in 19th century attire, the guests danced and laughed as if they couldn't see me. A beautiful woman in a crimson gown approached me, her eyes devoid of warmth. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered, her voice like a chilling wind. With a gasp, I was back in the ruined ballroom, my friends staring at me in confusion. I tried to explain what had just happened, but they brushed it off as my overactive imagination. We continued our exploration, growing more uneasy with each passing moment. In the dim light of the mansion, we stumbled upon an old library, its shelves filled with dusty tomes. As I picked up a book, a bone-chilling voice echoed through the room. "Leave this place or face the consequences." We exchanged frightened glances, but dismissed it as a trick of our minds. We were determined to uncover the mysteries of Silverwood Manor. As we ascended the creaking staircase, the air grew colder. The walls were adorned with faded portraits of people who seemed familiar yet otherworldly. In the master bedroom, we found a portrait of the same woman I had seen in the mirror. A feeling of dread settled over us as we realized that she was the key to the manor's curse. But it was too late. The room transformed into a nightmarish scene. The woman from the portrait emerged from the canvas, her eyes now blazing with anger. "You've trespassed into my home," she hissed, her voice echoing through the room. "Now you shall never leave." The walls closed in on us, and the temperature plummeted. Desperation gripped us as we tried to escape, but the doors and windows were sealed shut. The malevolent presence of the woman from the portrait engulfed us. In our final moments, I looked at my friends, their faces etched with fear. We had underestimated the power of the supernatural, and now we were paying the price. As the room grew colder and darker, I couldn't help but wonder if Silverwood Manor would forever be our haunted prison, a chilling reminder that some mysteries were best left unexplored. This Halloween, as I share my harrowing tale, I hope it serves as a warning to those who seek to uncover the secrets of the supernatural. For the horrors we experienced at Silverwood Manor are a reminder that some nightmares are all too real. I've always loved Halloween, the one night when the mundane transforms into the magical, and the impossible feels just a little closer to reality. As a child, I eagerly anticipated the annual trick-or-treat adventure with my friends, and this year was no different. Our neighborhood was the perfect setting for Halloween. Winding streets, old houses with creaky porches, and trees that cast eerie shadows under the moonlight. My friends and I had spent weeks planning our costumes, and we were determined to outdo ourselves this year. As we gathered on the front porch, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement tinged with unease. The night was chilly, and a heavy mist clung to the ground, lending an otherworldly atmosphere to the evening. We set out, our candy bags swinging with each step, and we followed the well-worn path through the neighborhood. The houses were adorned with jack-o'-lanterns and cobwebs, each one more elaborate than the last. Our first stop was the Whitaker House, a grand Victorian mansion that always went all out for Halloween. The Whitakers were known for their extravagant decorations, and they took great pride in giving out the best candy. As we climbed the porch steps, I noticed that the fog had thickened, obscuring the surrounding houses. I rang the doorbell, and the familiar chime echoed through the misty night. We waited, but no one answered. It was odd. The Whitakers had never missed a Halloween. We rang the bell again, but still, there was no response. Frustrated and slightly unnerved, we decided to move on. The next house on our list was the Thompsons, a quaint cottage that always had a warm, inviting feel. But as we approached, something felt off. The windows were dark, and the porch light was out. We exchanged puzzled glances and decided to knock. No one answered. It was as if the entire neighborhood had gone quiet. Undeterred, we continued down the street, but the unease lingered. The mist had grown thicker, and the path seemed to twist and turn in ways I didn't remember. We approached a house I'd never seen before, a dilapidated mansion hidden behind overgrown bushes. It loomed ominously, and an eerie sense of foreboding washed over us. As we cautiously ascended the porch steps, I couldn't help but notice that there was no candy bowl or decorations. The windows were shrouded in darkness, and the air felt cold and heavy. Reluctantly, I knocked on the door, and it creaked open with an eerie groan. Inside, the house was shrouded in shadow. A flickering candle on a dusty table was the only source of light. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and I shivered as I stepped over the threshold. "Trick or treat," I called out, my voice trembling. There was no response, just an unsettling silence. I cautiously entered the dimly lit hallway, my friends close behind. We explored room after room, each one more decrepit than the last. It was as if the house had been abandoned for decades. Finally, we entered the living room, and that's when we saw it. A figure stood in the corner, shrouded in darkness. It was tall and gaunt, with eyes that glinted like 2 points of malevolent light. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely audible. The figure didn't respond. It simply loomed in the corner, its presence suffocating. Panic set in as we realized that we were trapped in this decrepit house with no way out. We ran through the twisted, shadowy corridors, but the layout of the house seemed to change with each turn. The fog outside had grown denser, and we couldn't see the street. It was as if we were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. As we desperately searched for an exit, the figure pursued us, its haunting presence always just behind us. It whispered chilling words that echoed in our minds, promising an eternity of darkness. Finally, we burst through the front door and tumbled out onto the porch, gasping for breath. The mist had lifted, and the neighborhood had returned to its normal state. The Whitaker House, the Thompsons, and all the others were once again lit up with Halloween decorations. We couldn't explain what had happened in that forsaken house, but we knew we had narrowly escaped something unspeakable. The memory of that Halloween night still haunts my dreams, a reminder that not everything is as it seems on the most magical night of the year. Some horrors are real, lurking just beyond the fog, waiting for the unsuspecting to cross their path.